Okay, so this is a video that is just going to go over some basics that people would need to know if they're going to start becoming a basketball fan. These are just things you might want to know or that would help make it easier for you to watch or maybe even play basketball. So the first thing I wanted to go over is the dimensions of a basketball court. Since the project is about becoming a fan for UAF, I thought it'd be most relevant to go over the dimensions of a college court. So just a few key terms to start here. We call these the baselines. And over here is called the sidelines. So from baseline to baseline, it is 94 feet. That's standard for NBA and college, most college, at least the larger Division I college courts. These right here are called free throw lines. This is where you shoot after you get fouled. And these are 15 feet from the rim. If you measured them from the baseline, it would actually be 18 feet 10 inches. Like the way the rim sits about here. So if you measure it from the middle of the rim, it's actually, or from the base of the rim, it's actually 15 feet. So when you hear people talking about 15-foot jump shots, they're talking about this area here. The three-point line is this line here. So normally on a high school court, there wouldn't be this gap here. The three-point line goes right along the side of the key, but the college three-point line is a little bit deeper. The three-point line is about almost 21 feet from the center of the rim. The baseline from sideline to sideline is 50 feet. In the corner of this little gap here is 63 inches. So a lot of people say that this 3 at the top of the key is the easiest one, just because it's directly in front of the rim and you can use the backboard. So that's pretty much all the dimensions you need to know. This is the mid-court line. These little dashes you see here, this is where the teams sit, and this little line here just means that the coaches and players on the bench are not allowed to come across that line. That rule is not always strictly enforced. Sometimes you'll see coaches from other teams. You see it a lot in college and in the NBA. Their coaches will be out here trying to yell at the refs or whatnot. So it's not always strictly enforced, but that's what those little dashes are. So just a few of the major differences between a college court and an NBA court or high school court. A high school court, most regulation high school courts are 84 feet from baseline to baseline. And so that's 10 feet shorter, but are the same width. So usually where you see that difference, since the free throw line and the three-point line are relative, the free throw line is always the same. Three-point line is pretty close, so it's this area here that becomes a lot different. So the three-point line will be much closer to half court in a high school court. In NBA, they're the same length and width, but the three-point line is a lot further away. Okay, so I also thought it would be useful to go over the main positions in basketball. I used the starting 5 for the Golden State Warriors from last year, just as an example. So probably the easiest player to recognize or point out is the forward or the center. This is a lot of times in basketball they'll give them numbers, so they're also known as the 5. You can see it as they'll be listed as a forward or center or a post. The 5 is your biggest guy. So Andrew Bogut, this guy here, is the biggest guy. He's the tallest, sometimes the widest, and he usually plays in the paint, so usually free throw line down. In the NBA, obviously it's a little different. They'll sometimes be out shooting threes, but for the most part that's your biggest guy. Usually your second biggest guy, which is this guy here, is a 4, also known as a power forward, or sometimes they're just also called a forward or a post, but they're not usually referred to as a center. So this person is usually a little more agile, a little bit better of a shooter, but is still pretty big. Next we have the 3 guard, or sometimes called strong forward. And so they are more like a guard. They're better at dribbling the ball, better at shooting the ball than either the 4 or the 5. But usually of the 3 guards, the 1, 2, and 3, they are the biggest. So with Golden State, they're 1 and 2 here. These two are pretty interchangeable. Either one of them can bring the ball up the floor. They're both very good ball handlers. They can dribble well. They can both shoot very well. And so sometimes when you see it listed on a roster or whatnot, it might just be guard, 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 and forward, forward. And that's very possible. But your point guard is usually the person that is best at dribbling, and they will bring the ball up the floor and decide what plays to run and such if your coach is not deciding that for you. So for those people who are really going to start watching some basketball, I thought it might be useful to go through a few of the main offenses just so you guys kind of know what you're looking at. These diagrams are numbered the same way that the positions were numbered in the last slide, so it should be pretty easy to recognize. So first here we have a 4 out, 1 in, and that's, you have 4 people. The 3-point line's not really drawn in here, but you'd have 4 people outside of the 3-point line and only 1 person in the key. That's what we call this area here, we call it the key. This person, the 5, usually just roams in this area and maybe up here, and the rest of them kind of roam the 3-point line. They can dribble inside and shoot and all sorts of things, but that's pretty general. Next we have a 3 out and 2 in, so that's where your 2 posts are both in the paint. You only have 3 guards out on around the 3-point line, which is what we call the perimeter. So in this offense, usually the post will come up to the free throw line and back down, and then this post will come up and go back down, and they just they stay in this area here, kind of like a triangle. Okay, and the last offense is a 5 out, and so in this offense, there's, as you can see, there's no posts in the paint. And you usually run this when you don't have very big posts, or your posts are very good shooters or ball handlers. And so there's a lot of, this person can cut through, and then, or this person can cut through. This one may cut, maybe they'll stop and shoot from there. So it's a lot. 5 out is a lot of movement because there's nobody inside. So all the people on the perimeter kind of have free reign. So since we went over defenses or offenses, I thought it'd be useful to go over the different defenses you may see. Sometimes it can be really hard to recognize what defense people are in, because sometimes zones look like a man, sometimes mans look like a zone, and so on, but just so you get an idea. This over here is man-to-man. This is probably the easiest one to recognize, because each one of these people, as you can see, they're paired up. So anytime their player moves, they're going to move with them. And the same here, they're just not playing as close to each other. But anytime their player moves, so if, this number 3 over here cuts in, then the 3 defenders are going to have to go with them. So that's probably the easiest one to identify. Over here is a 2-3 zone. And the way that works is just you have your 3 biggest players on the bottom, 2 small players on the top, and I'll just draw in these little areas that you're responsible for. So the 2 top guards are responsible for anything in this area. Those bottom, the 3 and 4 are responsible for the corners, and the 5 has everything in the middle. This last zone is a 1-3-1. We call that because there's 1 at the top, 3 in the middle, 1 on the bottom. This can be a really hard defense to recognize if you're new to basketball, but it's pretty common and it's run by a lot of teams. So there's a lot of different ways to do it. The way that we do it is this guard at the top has anything up here, and then these wings also kind of help up there. You see the 5 has anything in the middle here, and then the 4 has this entire bottom rectangle. So if anybody shoots out there, it's their responsibility. Okay, so I thought it would be useful to go through some of the kind of the basic rules that you might encounter. This is important if you're starting to play basketball. If you're watching the NBA, it's probably not so important because they don't call this very often, but you do see it called much more in high school and college basketball. So first we'll start with the travel. What that means is once you put 1 foot down, that's a step, so you can leave that foot down and move the other foot around as much as you want, as long as you don't pick that foot up. And that's okay, but if you are running with the ball, you only get 2 steps after you pick it up. So this first video here, he takes 1, 2, 3, 4 steps he takes. I'll watch it one more time. He's dribbling, 1, 2, 3, 4, shot. So that's definitely travel. Once again, like I said, in the NBA, it's pretty common for them not to call it. Here's an example of what I was talking about with pivoting. So he keeps switching his feet, and that's illegal. You have to keep 1 foot planted, and then you can move the other foot around as much as you'd like. So next is a double dribble. Once you dribble the ball, you're not allowed to pick it up and then dribble again. That's a violation. So here, you watch this guy dribble, and then he stops, he gets stuck, and then he dribbles again. So that should have been called, but once again in the NBA, it's very rarely called. The next rule is a backcourt violation. So what that means is, we talked about where half court is at. Once you cross half court and are on offense, you can't take the ball back to the other side. So we'll watch this clip here, we'll kind of explain it. So the white team still has it. Kind of jumped there. So the white team has the ball. They still have the ball. They throw it all the way back across that white line. And that's why it stopped, because it was backcourt. And the last one I added on there is a shot clock violation. So you'll see the main clock, and then you'll see a smaller clock that either has 30 seconds or 35 seconds or sometimes 25 seconds if you're in the NBA. And once that hits 0, you have to shot the ball and had it hit the rim. And if that hasn't happened, then the other team gets the ball. It's just kind of a way to speed up the game a little bit. And so lastly, I thought it'd be important to go through just real quick how you score and how the point system works. So anything shot inside the 3-point line, so anywhere in here, including if your foot is on the line, gives you 2 points. Anything beyond the 3-point line gives you 3 points. And if you're fouled, sometimes you'll see people shooting from the free throw line. They're shooting free throws. That's where it got its name. Shooting from here, that's worth 1 point.
I'm gonna love you until you hate me, and now I'm gonna show you what's really crazy. You should've known better. Let them mess with me harder. I'm gonna love you. I'm gonna love you. Gonna love you. Gonna love you.